Right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Talking Nebraska, we got Greg Peterson on the line. You can join him on Husker Online. Of course, Big Ten Media Days just concluded in Nebraska, which turned out to be quite the fiasco and journey for the Nebraska players, Scott Frost, and the media as well. Greg, how you doing today?
I'm not doing too bad. How about you, Mark?
I am doing just fine. I appreciate you stopping by to talk to some Nebraska football. Of course, you can catch all our video posts that we did with Greg. We broke down the personnel on both sides of the ball. So quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers on down the line, both sides of the ball. Please check out those videos. So you had quite the odyssey yourself in trying to get to Chicago.
Yeah, it was quite the adventure. We were scheduled. Well, originally Nebraska was supposed to go on day 2. But the Big Ten switched them to day 1, and so we had a 6:20 a.m. flight booked out of Lincoln on Thursday morning, which would have been no problem to get there, but storms in Chicago closed down O'Hare Airport, and so we were on the plane and went back to the gate and basically sat there until about 1:15. We were there for 7 hours as Scott Frost and the team. They had their troubles getting there too, but they're at the podium while we're watching it in the airport. And so we finally got there after an hour and a half cab ride from O'Hare, about 4:30. And so Nebraska had been long done. And luckily though, we had an intern that, she volunteered to drive down on her own dime. And I sent a bunch of video equipment with her. So she got everything for us that we'd always get anyway. So it was quite the day.
Well, I guess you get to hear from the players one way or the other that way, but kind of tough to cover Big Ten Media Days when everybody else around the nation can watch it except you.
Yeah. We did watch it, though, in the airport. So
very nice. Very nice. Well, Scott Frost, of course, brought a couple defensive players with him and also Adrian Martinez. Just what stood out to you, starting with the head coach?
Well, Scott Frost, it seems like nothing ever phases him. And I think, he started off being late getting there with a couple of jokes. And I think he started to, really start to impress the rest of the national media. I mean, all of us here in Nebraska, we're used to the way he is and, the way he talks with the media. But I think that his biggest message was that the team, their confidence is sky high right now. And, when you're going into year 2, it's a lot different than year 1 in his system. And, guys get it now. They know where to go on every play. And so it's going to make it that much faster at every position because they're not taking that one step slower that might make the difference between a tackle or a touchdown. And I think the team is super confident now coming into the year. And another thing I took away was his relationship with Adrian Martinez has really seemed to grow quite a bit. I think we might take that for granted here in Nebraska that we're around them all the time. But there was a lot of questions from the national media that he kind of exposed how close those guys are, and it seems like he's like a second son to him right now.
Very interesting. Scott Frost obviously has a way with kids at that age in regards to development after the recruitment, and what he did at UCF is one of the big reasons why, of course, Nebraska is being picked up by the media, along with Iowa, in the unofficial Big Ten media poll that I saw, a tie for first place between the Hawkeyes and the Huskers in regards to splitting votes in the Big Ten Western Division. I got to see Scott Frost being interviewed by Big Ten Network along with the players as well. Kind of a unique situation. Well, we'll keep it with Adrian Martinez. Let's start there, and then we'll move to the defense and the rest of the team. But in regards to his playmaking ability, certainly he was talking about his progression and what he can do to be a better player this year. The defensive guys, it's always interesting to hear the other side of the football comment because they have the unique situation of playing against that guy every day in practice. They were just talking about how much respect, despite just being a freshman last year, how much respect they quickly gained for him based on his playmaking ability, his work ethic, and just basically showing leadership and confidence just right out of the gate.
Well, yeah, and I think they've been saying that since day one last year when Adrian stepped on campus, that he was so impressive. But now it's grown to the point where, it was tough for Martinez to come in and take over that leadership role right away. But now with a year under his belt, he's made that a priority. He comes in, he said right after winter conditioning is when it really started to pick up. Well, in the first place, it started to pick up, though, in the last 4 or 5 games of the season when he started really figuring out how things work and, how to play the quarterback position at the college level. And now, these guys, they practice against him every day. And, guys like Mohamed Barry got the utmost respect for Adrian because they see how talented he is and what he can do on the field. And it throws them fits when they're trying to figure out what he's going to do with the ball. So, I mean, he's gained that respect from every single player on that defense and on that offense. And, he handles it like a man. You would never think that he's a 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid that should have just got out of high school. And if you listen to him talk, he sounds like a seasoned veteran now. And, he's got the weight of a whole state, a whole Husker nation on him, and it doesn't even seem to faze him. And I give a lot of response or a lot of credit to that from quarterbacks coach Mario Verduzco, because when Adrian gets asked questions about plays that stick with them or schemes, stuff like that, it's exactly what Coach Verduzco always tells us too. I mean, those guys have built a special relationship as well as like Scott Frost's relationship with Adrian. But he sounds like he's 23 years old right now. And, I expect big things from him coming up here starting fall camp.
A lot of expected of Darian Daniels as well in regards to the people that are really paying attention that follow college football and follow Nebraska. Obviously, he doesn't have the name nationally, and he's not playing the position of quarterback, so less people know about it. But when those guys on the defensive side of the ball talked about Darian Daniels, you could tell how excited they were to have another playmaker, a potential game changer type of guy. And he had already, again, despite not playing a snap against an opponent at this point, had already gained tons of respect from those guys because they know what kind of talent they have. And it sounds like he's a worker too, who's gained that level of respect in the clubhouse as well.
Well, absolutely. And, he's battle tested at Oklahoma State, and, Mike Gundy wanted him back very badly. And he was very upset when he decided to move on to Nebraska. And there's a reason for that. The guy, not just a good football player, but he's a massive human being. He's a run stopper. And that's what Nebraska needs on that defensive line. And I think the guys on the team, they welcomed him in, with open arms. And he took over as the leader on there because he's had 3 years of football at Oklahoma State as a starter. And, little brother Damian, he's got him to mess around with. Those guys, there was a funny story that Coach Tuioti had told us in the locker room that Damian had sat down in Darren's seat at the meeting, and Darren came in and told little brother to move, and he wouldn't move. And they got into it, just like brothers will do right there in the meeting room. But, the rest of the defense, they know what they've got in him. And that makes the defensive line that much stronger. And with a lot of young depth behind them, that's supposed to be a strength of the team coming into the season.
Well, when you tell that story, it brings to mind the phrase that's used more often in football and in sports these days is talking about the brotherhood, talking about everybody in the locker room. And you got to have that kind of mentality that we're all brothers because we're in this together. And if we're going to win, we really need to be in it together. But Nebraska takes that to a whole new level with 2 sets of brothers on the defense. Absolutely.
It's a big time family atmosphere. The Davis twins are going into their senior season, and Khalil was one of the 3 players at media days for Nebraska. And these guys, these brothers, I don't want to call them kids because I've known them since they were kids when they were playing in high school. And they've always been two of the most genuine guys you'd ever want to talk to. They love each other so much, and it spreads to the rest of the defense. And they know this is their final year to shine because they've been here for so long, waiting for the black shirts to come back to the way that the black shirts used to be historically when they were recruited to come here. So, and that just it spills over to the rest of the guys. Mohammed Berry, the other guy that was there at media days, he's this is his team and he's the leader of this, and everybody looks up to Mo as well. And I like to see it because these guys have gone through so much in their time here at Nebraska. They've gone through so many different coaches and stuff, and they finally have a situation where it is a family atmosphere, and they believe in what these coaches are telling them. They've had different coaches telling them the same thing, but now that it's year 2 in this system, now they've bought into it, and instead of trying to dip your foot in the pool like Coach Frost would say last year, they're fully in the pool now, and it should be a special thing to see the black shirts come back the way they're supposed to be.
Right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down Nebraska. We got Greg Peterson on the line from Husker Online, so please join him right there with the rest of the staff breaking down Nebraska football with the Huskers hitting the field on August 3rd for fall camp, and of course, much expected this year out of Nebraska football. And speaking of that, Scott Frost seemed to be pretty balanced, Greg, when it comes to both not being satisfied with season 1, but also understanding the takeaways and appreciating the development, appreciating a team that went from getting blown out by 46 to Michigan that was good enough to stay within a score of Ohio State and take Iowa to the last play. Like that balance you want to see out of a competitor to know we're not satisfied with that. That's not our standard, but he appreciates, hey, it was a work in progress, and I saw a lot of growth, and he gave a lot of credit to the seniors that were on that team. Yeah. I heard a few statements made about, hey, what we accomplish in the future, they built the foundation.
Well, absolutely. And, I think the funniest thing that might have came out of the weekend was very early when Nebraska athletic director Bill Moose was interviewed, and he was asked a question by one of our colleagues, Andy Kennedy from KTV7 in Omaha, about his expectations about a successful season. And Bill Moose said 6 wins. And so when Scott Frost got asked the same question, he kind of got disgusted, and he said that I don't think anybody would be satisfied around here with 6 wins. And you can tell that that's the mentality now. Once now that they've got into year 2 of their system and year 2 under Zach Duvall with their strength and conditioning, it's a whole different deal now. And Scott Frost wants things to be the same way it used to be when he was here winning a national title, with the Husker Power program, the weightlifting program, being the tops in the country. And the thing with him is that, he says that he's always wanted to make that mixture of what he had in Oregon with the speed and the quickness of the offense combined with the Husker Power program of years of old, and to have the ultimate team that's not going to lose any games. And he thinks that they're very close to that right now. And I think, the confidence oozes out of him, but he kind of hides it a little bit too, because he doesn't want to get people too excited. Husker Nation, they want to win now. They want it to be back like it used to be. But now, it takes a little bit of time. But with a lot of the national outlets picking Nebraska to win the West, Frost feels like it's been Nebraska's fault that the Big Ten West hasn't been that good since Nebraska joined the Big Ten, and it was supposed to balance out the East and the West. And he thinks right now that they're getting very close to that. And, I think he's got a chip on his shoulder that he wants Nebraska to be that team that, is playing Ohio State, is playing Michigan every year in and out for the Big Ten title. So, I like the way Scott Frost operates. And We hear a little bit of different things from him when he's with the national media as opposed to being here every day. And so you get some of that coach speak on some of that stuff. But all in all, he's pretty genuine. And, he just wants to win. That's the bottom line.
Well, Greg, I got to tell you, my predictions would be better served if I didn't watch any of these media days, because after you see these coaches come through and you listen to everybody, it sounds like they're ready to go to the NFL and win a Super Bowl, which is well, it depends on the coach's take. It seems like the elite teams want to talk themselves down a little bit, and then everybody else wants to lift themselves up. But when it comes to that Big Ten Western Division, my goodness, and we'll dive that into that in another segment, just in regards to the improvement of these programs across the board, even going down to Illinois, who was a little bit better last year and shows signs of life. It could be, I think it's the most competitive division in the nation. And again, we can talk about that at another time. But I really want to get to this latest commitment. Blaze Gunnarsson, generally, depending on the service, a top 30 strong side defensive end out of Iowa.
Yeah, Blaze, he's, when you see him in person, he is very impressive. It's funny because last time we talked, he committed probably about 10 minutes after we hung up with each other. But, he was a guy that, was down between Iowa State and Nebraska. And, he is working very closely with the Nebraska coach's staff. He was down at the Friday Night Lights camp here in June. And, he went, and then he took a final visit back to Iowa State and decided Nebraska was the place for him. And he's the guy, he's one of those, he's going to serve that outside rush position that they need. The guy, he is a true pass rushing defensive end. Monster. He's huge. He was hurt most of last year too. I believe he got hurt in the first game of the year, so he missed most of his junior season. It might have been the second or third game of the year, but he didn't get to play much, and so he might have been a little bit under recruited because of that. He coached defensive line coach Tony Tuioti and linebackers coach Barrett Ruud really, really love this guy. And I think he's another guy, everybody they recruit, they're recruiting guys that have the potential to come in and play right away. And, it might start sounding like a broken record, but this guy, he definitely has the potential to come in and play right away. He's already, made all kinds of relationships with current players on the team. And, he's going to come in here and fit in. And can't wait to see him come play here. I'm going to go see, I think the first week of the season, the high school season, I'm going to go see him play.
Very good stuff. Sounds like Nebraska's got a find there at strong side defensive end, and certainly we've got a find here in recent weeks with Greg Peterson joining us from Husker Online, breaking down the Huskers, a team that we are intrigued to track this season. Greg, we appreciate you stopping by. We know you got your work cut out for you in the next several weeks, so thanks for taking 20, 25 minutes with us.
Actually, thank you, but actually really looking forward to Tuesday to seeing the new basketball team. We get a chance to see them for about a half an hour before they take off to Italy, new head coach Fred Hoiberg's first team here at Nebraska. So that's going to be, I'm looking forward to that before fall camp starts up here.
All right, Greg, have a good one.
Thanks, you too, Mark. Nice talking to you.